people needed to be locked up for about 2 months to get it out of their system. When they did, we put them on home detention. We created a program through Hamilton Center, much like AA, where they daily go to treatment. That worked. We took their money away. We took their assets and their vehicles away, which the federal, state, and local government says you can do, and we've done it. And lastly, we educated. You want to know what we do is we've really gotten in the schools. And the statistic I'm most proud of is we haven't had one kid in school ever test positive for meth. We drew a fire line with the kids. And I'm in the schools at the beginning of the year, in the middle of the year, and the end of the year. And the fire line has been drawn that we're not going to let it sink into our youth. The second thing is the child support. I mean, it was out of control. I mean, there are solutions. If you crack down, they're going to pay. If you lock them up, let me tell you what, they're going to pay their support. Okay? And the third thing is the child molesters. It's very simple. You know, Daniel Trueblood, you let out, he molests again. There are certain people in our society that you can't rehabilitate. There are certain people that are pedophiles that you can't rehabilitate. And our number one goal is to protect our children. And that comes before rehabilitation and anything else. And I've done that. I mean, my sentences are 400% greater than Mr. Perry's were in the last 6 years he was there. That's how you solve problems.
Thank you. Mr. Perry, would you like the question repeated?
Yes, I would.
What are your qualifications for this position, and what distinguishes you from your opponent?
As I indicated, I've been a lawyer for some 30, 35, 36 years. I've practiced law in Greencastle. I've been in the prosecutor's office for 8 years. I was formerly an assistant United States attorney and prosecuted cases working with the DEA, the FBI, the Secret Service, and the Internal Revenue Service. I think one thing that's perhaps distinct from in my experience from that of Mr. Bookwalter's is I had a good bit of experience with white-collar cases, and we've had over the last few years a number of situations where we've had people embezzling from their employers, very often charitable institutions or churches, and those cases I think I have perhaps a unique ability to proceed with white-collar cases. The suggestion that Mr. Bookwalter has sentences are 400% higher than mine, I think is probably nonsense. We would, first of all, have to define what are Mr. Bookwalter's cases. Are we talking about all the cases in the office or just the ones that he does personally?
We're talking about all the cases.
And I think that that's simply impossible.
Okay, Mr. Bookwalter, you may now have a rebuttal if you'd like.
Bob, we're talking about all the cases. It's not impossible. Your average sentence, if you average every case you did, was about 2 years. Our average is over 10 years for the whole office, and my average alone is over 15 years. So, you need to remember what you did when you're the prosecutor. When you give that stuff away, it's going to have an effect on those kids. That's an important area that we've got to practice.
Mr. Perry?
Nothing further.
Okay, then we will go to our next question, and that will come from the banner graphic. Mr. Perry, you'll be able to address it first. And if you could please identify yourself, Jared.
Yes, I'm Jared Jernigan from the banner graphic. It's something that's already been addressed somewhat, but I just would like to hear both of you's thoughts on the money seized along I-70, the drug forfeiture funds, on as it is currently used and as you feel that it should be used.
I have some difficulties with the current process. As I indicated in opening, state law provides that when assets are forfeited, you deduct first the cost of law enforcement, and next you pay the excess over to the common school fund. And according to the reporting by the Indianapolis Star, really only one county in the state, and that would be Allen County, Fort Wayne, appears to be in compliance with the law. Putnam County at present employs an outside lawyer and pays him on contingent fee to pursue asset forfeiture cases, and I think probably has paid him over the last 6 years somewhere in the neighborhood of $300,000 or more in contingency fees. At present, the asset forfeiture money is paid into a local fund, and we do some very worthy things with it. But my concern is, first of all, it does not appear to be in compliance with state law, and I have difficulty with the concept that those who are charged with the responsibility of enforcing state law may be themselves in violation of state law. And further, I think, particularly based upon the conclusion of the State Board of Accounts, that we are, or that Putnam County is at present diverting monies that ought to be paid over to the common school fund, that there may come a day of reckoning in the next 2 or 3 years, when the county is presented with a bill to restore those funds which may have been misappropriated to the common school fund, and that bill could be in excess of $1 million.
Thank you. Jared, could you please repeat the question for Mr. Brookwalter?
Yes, just am wanting your thoughts on this issue of the asset forfeiture, how those funds are currently being used, and as you know, how they should properly be used.
You know, I'd love to take credit for the asset forfeiture fund program, but I didn't start it. It started when Mr. Perry was in the office. For 8 years, they were doing it. You know how much they put in the common school fund? Not a nickel. Not a penny, Bob. You didn't put a penny in. You know what they did with the money? They let Hendricks County Drug Task Force do the work, and we seize money. These guys seize money on our roads. They let Hendricks County take it and keep the money. We didn't get anything. The only thing I did when I became prosecutor, I said, time out. This doesn't make sense. The money, our officers are seizing, and Hendricks County spending it because there was this drug task force. So we quit. I quit it. We have raised $2 million, okay? You betcha we paid that lawyer, and he's earned every penny of it. We've collected $2 million. Police cars for the city, town marshals, equipment, haven't come out of taxpayer dollars. They've come out of profits from drug dealers, okay? Now, you think those drug dealers are paying taxes on that money? Do you think they're paying Social Security tax? No, they're not. We're taking their vehicles and we're following the law, okay? Now, Bob's not up to date on the law. The State Board of Accounts is represented by the Indiana Attorney General, okay? May 12th of this year, he written a legal opinion that says, no, the money does not go to the common school fund. But Bob's wrong, it's not Allen County. Number one's Wayne County. In the entire state of Indiana, 92 counties, okay? Wayne County, Richmond, Indiana gave the most. Guess who was second, according to the Indianapolis Star? Do you think it was Indianapolis, Fort Wayne, Putnam County? We were number 2. The money that goes by a seizure through the court goes to that fund. The rest of it goes into our asset forfeiture fund. Mr. Perry's tried to say in the paper that this money would go to the schools. You know, this $2 million would help us fund teachers and things. No. The Common School Fund is an antiquated law from 1850. The principle of the fund cannot be spent by law. The interest by statute goes to the Department of Education for their administrative costs. Not a nickel would come back here. You betcha we do it. I'm proud we do it. We're going to keep doing it, and we're going to keep taking the assets and the vehicles away from those drug dealers, and we're going to use it to fund our law enforcement and save the taxpayers' money.
Thank you. Mr. Perry, do you have a rebuttal or follow-up?
Well, there can be reasonable differences of opinion. The Attorney General has taken the position that when you have outside settlements, that the statute dealing with the paying the money to the Common School Fund is not applicable. But the Attorney General of the state is not a court. He is not a judge. He does not have the power to decide that. The State Board of Accounts, quite recently, more recently than the Attorney General's opinion, has taken the contrary view. I think there is a substantial danger that at some point in time, the county is going to be presented with the bill. And that bill could be enormous.
A follow-up, Mr. Brookwalter.
Mr. Perry says all 92 counties and all 92 prosecutors are wrong. The attorney generals are wrong. Judge Headley and Judge Bridges, who have agreed to these agreements and signed off on them, are wrong. The federal courts are wrong. No, I think Mr. Perry's wrong.
Thank you. We will now move on to our next question here at the County Prosecutor Candidate Debate, and that will come from WGRE News, and it will start with you, Mr. Bookwalter.
What is your stance on the death penalty? Would you use it, and when would you use it?
You know, I'm the only lawyer, I think, in the state of Indiana that's defended death penalties and prosecuted. Interesting thing. I defended two, and I've dealt with really sort of two. Mr. Minnick, if you remember Mr. Minnick, I'm still dealing with Mr. Minnick. We had the Christopher Stevens, who murdered and molested the little boy. I wasn't prosecutor at the time, but I got the case back. I'm in favor of the death penalty. Here's what I'm against. I'm against the fact that it's not used properly. I mean, it has become ineffective in the sense that appeals go on and on and on. Let me give you an example. With Christopher Stevens, it happened in 1993. We went through every appeal you could go through. Okay? State appeals, federal appeals, then you start all over again and go back through the appeals again and again and again. And in 2008, the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals on ineffective assistance of counsel threw out the death penalty conviction. And I was faced with retrying the case. Justin Long and I spent about 18 months getting ready for trial, and we were ready for trial. Okay. I sat down with the parents, okay, Todd and Sandy Snyder, who lived this mess, and you can imagine. And you know what they wanted? They wanted certainty. And we would have gotten the death penalty. I went to South Carolina to the National Prosecutors College in front of the top capital litigation specialists in the country, including the guy that did the DC snipers. Without a doubt, we would have gotten a conviction. But you know what? We would have started over again. We would have started another 20 years of appeals over again. So I took Mom and Dad with us. We went up, and they said, we want finality to this. So we reached an agreement to life without parole, no chance he could ever get out, and no chance that he gave up all rights to appeal. So my problem is in the practice of how it's done in our state.
Thank you. Mr. Perry, would you like the question repeated?
Yes, please.
What is your stance on the death penalty? Would you use it, and when would you use it?
I think the death penalty is appropriate in some circumstances. Indiana law defines a specific category of homicide in which the death penalty can be sought. I think you need to proceed with great caution in that area and reserve the death penalty for all of those cases that are truly horrific and truly death penalty worthy. Mr. Bookwalter is correct that in Indiana and throughout the country, the appeals process, the relitigation process goes on for so long that, you know, it may be 15 or 20 years in some cases between the event and an execution. So if you're going to pursue that, you need to do it in a case that everyone agrees, you know, victim, prosecutors, that this is the case that is appropriate to proceed upon. We've had 2 death penalty cases from Putnam County, as Mr. Bookwalter indicates. In neither case was the individual executed, and I think both of those were in the courts for 15 or 20 years.
Thank you. Mr. Bookwalter, do you have a follow-up? Or?
No, no.
Mr. Perry?
No.
Okay, then we'll move on to the next question, and that will come from the Greencastle League of Women Voters, and it will go to Mr. Perry first.
I forgot to introduce myself before. I'm Karen Martolio. I'm with the League of Women Voters. I thank you for coming tonight. What do you view as the role of the prosecutor's office in collaborating with mental health and social service agencies?
That's a good question. For most of my 8 years in the prosecutor's office, I was involved with the juvenile court system, and I was privileged